right, in his beloved memory, right, and the family should be blessed, the sponsorship of Torah, Marbitz Torah in the world, and to have Shalom Bayis and have growth and Parnasser and all the things that are important in life and go to Derech HaTorah. And this is very, very important, especially in these times that this is being sponsored by the family. V'nili Neshama. And as fate would have it, I was asked to get the title of Rosh Yeshiva, of Yeshiva Rabbi Akiva. And we're pleasured, of course, to sponsor this also, so everybody should know, if it didn't go out, you didn't see it on Tuesday, Tisha B'Av, at the Yeshiva at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for women and 5 o'clock in the afternoon for men. We'll be presenting the Chavetz Chaim Heritage Foundation presentation of Rabbi, who's doing this year? Pesach Kron and Rabbi Leff, right, in the afternoon. Women at 3 and men at 5. And I'd like to take this opportunity, as again, Rosh Yeshiva, when I got the title, I said, boy, that's great, isn't it? So that Rosh Yeshiva equals fundraiser. So I would like to invite anybody that would like to help. The Shia has been paid for, it's free for everybody. So if anybody can help the Yeshiva, we're always in need of help, and the Yeshiva is here to Marbitz Torah and to give opportunity for older men who don't have backgrounds, primarily, to be able to get the gift of their birthright, of our birthright as Jewish men, to be able to sit and learn. And get the skills to do real learning, not just sit in shiurs, which are wonderful, but to sit and learn inside, right, and have a life of Torah and have a life of fulfillment like was never known earlier in our years. So anybody can help is welcome to speak to me or to help me here. This is a little pushka to the yeshiva today, and to be in touch with me, right, to help the yeshiva so we can keep going and be open for everybody who has needs, right, in terms of learning, to provide those needs for people that are looking for a place to learn. With that, I'll ask Rabbi Kessin again. Please turn off your telephones and please hold questions until the end. And if anybody who isn't on our emailing list for the yeshiva, if you'll give us your email, right, at the end of the shiur, give it to me. We'll put it on and we're going to send out the copies. Rather, this tape will be sent out to people either tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. Awesome. Okay, everybody enjoy the shiur. And again, it's a pleasure that we've had the opportunity to sponsor this and make Rav Kessin available for everybody to hear his Torah.
First of all, I want to thank Rav Shalom Gold for the opportunity to give this shiur, especially at this time. And really, the shiur should be a schus for the older people fighting for Klal Yisrael. That's really what it is. Second of all, it's a very great honor to be in the old city. It's a great honor to be in the old city. And we know all through the centuries how many Jews struggled to get here and to live in Eretz Yisrael. So it's a great honor to give a shiur in the old city, especially about Eretz Yisrael. This shiur is in many ways a great challenge. It's a challenge for, first of all, to be able to encapsulate Tisha B'Av, really talk about its essence. And the second idea is a tremendous challenge to be able to understand what is happening and why. Clearly this is part of the divine agenda. We all know that. Nothing is mikra, nothing is chance. And the question is, how do we understand what is going on? Why is it going on? And what can we take away from this? What can we learn about this? That is the question. And in many ways, that's the most important thing. So what this shiur will deal with is what is happening, why, and what can we learn from this, which is really very critical. Because what we can learn from this, in many ways, I believe, is why this entire thing is happening, as I will obviously try to demonstrate. So I want to thank everybody for coming. And I hope that when you leave, you will have clarity in terms of what is happening. Let's start with Tisha B'Av. I don't know how long this year is going to be, so maybe it's going to go till 1 or 2 a.m. Whatever it is, but it'll be, what I really want to do is I want to give a comprehensive understanding of what is happening, not just a fragmentary idea, which is normally how most people think about things, but to look at it in terms of really what's called the divine agenda or the divine plan. And of course, it's my speculation, obviously, but the ideas that I present really emanate from the Derech Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who's one of the greatest Kabbalists of the last 500 years, and he wrote many Sfarim, and he espouses many ideas, obviously, and I've been a student of the Ramchal for a long time, and it's a challenge to put together a lot of the ideas to develop a framework. And because of that framework, to be able to understand what is going on. Let's take a look first. In order to understand today what is going on, you really have to understand Tisha B'Av. And that's why it's happening now, in the 3 weeks. This isn't an accident. But the concept of Tisha B'Av, in many ways, is a revelation in terms of why it's happening now, which we will see. Let's take a look at Tisha B'Av first. Because you really need, in order to really understand well what is happening, you really need an introduction, a Hakdama. There's some basic information. And then you can appreciate what is happening. Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, terrible day for Klal Yisrael, terrible day for the Jews. Many things happened on Tisha B'Av. We know. The Meraglim, they spoke Lashon Hora about Eretz Yisrael. And what that did is that initiated the Golus. In many ways, that became the true Golus. Even though they were in Egypt before, as we will see, and that's certainly part of the Golus, exile. But really, the real Golus of Jews started after the Meraglim, because of Lashon Hora. So that happened today. Second thing, of course, is the Beis HaMikdash. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. The third thing, of course, was the destruction of the third Beis HaMikdash. The third thing that happened was the second Beis HaMikdash. That all happened on the same day. And there are other things that also happened. But we know that Tisha B'Av essentially is a time of mourning. That's what we do on Tisha B'Av. We mourn. The question is, why do we mourn? Sounds like a very strange question. Well, if you think about it, the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, as Chazal say, because of the sins of Klal Yisrael. The second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinas Chinam. And the essential idea of Sinas Chinam, based as hatred, is the concept of Lashon Hora, because that's really why it was destroyed. Chofetz Chaim says this, that the real reason why the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed wasn't Sinas Chinam per se. That would not have been enough to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. But the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of the results of Sinas Chinam, which of course is Lashon Hora. When there's hatred of one another, then of course you begin to speak Lashon Hora. So the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Lashon Hora. But the idea is that they're the ones who spoke Lashon Hora. They caused the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Why then should we suffer? So you could answer, well, maybe we're not really mourning in the sense that we are looking at something that we caused, but perhaps they caused it, so what we're really doing is commemorating something. We are commemorating. Are there no more cheers in this place? There are? Yeah. We are commemorating the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, 2 cheers here, 2 cheers here. There's one over there. So we are in essence commemorating the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. The question is, what would we be commemorating? Well, there are 3 ideas that I could mention. First idea is the Siluk Shechina. The Shechina left, whatever that means, but the Rosh Hashanah obviously vacated the premises. And To vacate means he destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. So we could say that we're commemorating the loss of the Shekhinah, and that is a terrible loss. I don't want to go into it extensively, but just very simply, could you imagine davening Mincha Marav in the Beis Hamikdash with the Shekhinah resting on the Beis Hamikdash? I'm sure it would be a different Mincha Marav or Shachris or whatever. So clearly, the Shekhinah, the loss of the Shekhinah, is affected us in terms of our avodah. It's not the same. But it's besides that, the proximity of the presence of God, the Shekhinah, to us, is an indicator or a barometer of the proximity of the Rebbe to us as a people, not just in distance, but in terms of our closeness to the Rebbe. So perhaps we commemorate the loss of the Shekhinah, which has many, many, obviously, manifestations. Or perhaps enormous diminishment of Ruchnius. There was Nevuah, prophecy. Now, prophecy is the greatest spiritual state attainable by a human being. I'm not going into it, but fundamentally it's called an intrusional phenomena. What it does is allows you, not physically, but mentally, to ascend to the Olamas and to see into the Olamas. I'm getting into how and why, but it's a beyond belief phenomenon. And as such, every Novi would experience an unbelievable amount of dvekus, and that was the real reason why he wanted to be a Novi. Second thing he would experience is incredible hasagas. Hasagas, which means, of course, enormous secret revelations. And at times, for special people who were sent on a mission, they would also experience precognition, which is the ability to tell the future. But the concept of nevuah, is an unbelievable spiritual experience. But we lost that. So maybe that's why we commemorate Tisha B'Av. Third possibility, another possibility, is the concept that we lost political independence. Until now, what did we have? We had the ability to be a free nation. But with Tisha B'Av, with the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, we lost the ability to be free and be able to practice Judaism, Yiddishkeit, on our own. And that is a terrible loss. So therefore, those are three ideas. The Siluk Shechina, where the Shechina left, which had enormous amount of implications. The diminishment of Ruchnius, of spirituality, and the loss of political independence. And I'm sure there are many more things. But we could say, remember, we commemorate that. But the truth is, we don't commemorate. Jews don't commemorate anything. You know, maybe they do that in the United States when they eat turkey for Thanksgiving, so they commemorate the original pilgrims. A Jew doesn't commemorate anything. What does he do? A Jew is masaken, the bria. A Jew rectifies creation. That's what he does. There is no other objective, but a Jew has to bring a tikkun, which means a rectification, a correction to the entire creation. And that's why we have Tisha B'Av. So the question is, what is our connection really to Tisha B'Av? And the answer to that is, we caused the destruction. Exactly. They didn't cause the destruction now. They caused it then. We caused it now. So you're going to say, well, what do I mean? Well, there's Yerushalmi that says the following. Kol dor, shrei nivne beis hamikdash biyomov, any generation in which the Beis Hamikdash wasn't built, kilu nechrav biyomov, it's as if it was destroyed. What does that really mean? It's interesting. What it really means is this, is that every time Ov arrives, there's an incredible best in Shemayim. There's an unbelievable din, judgment. Do the Jews deserve to have the Beis Hamikdash again? Because there's always a force in the universe, in Shemayim, that wants to bring the Beis Hamikdash back. Listen, you know, it's really interesting to think, who wants to get close to us? Who wants it more? Does the Rebbe want to get closer to us? Or do we want to get closer to him? Which desire is greater? Kaviyochel. And the answer is, his desire is greater, not ours. Our desire to join with the Rebbe is infinitesimal compared to his desire to be with Klal Yisrael, Kaviyochel, and so on. And that's really what goes on. So therefore, whenever arrives, there's always a gzera, or rather a din. Do the Jews have the right to have the Beis HaMikdash? Unfortunately, there's a tremendous kitrug, prosecution from the Sultan. And apparently he's won 1,946 times, because that's how far back the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. In other words, if the Beis HaMikdash would be standing, then the Beis HaMikdash would be destroyed now, because that's the Gzera, that it cannot be here. If the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed and remains destroyed, then the Gzera is it cannot be built. Either way, it means the absence of the Beis HaMikdash. And since we don't have the Beis HaMikdash, actually I really shouldn't say that, because we're still away from Tisha B'Av. You never know. Maybe this Tisha B'Av, the Beis HaMikdash will come down in fire, and the Russian will return to Klal Yisrael. Who knows? So I don't want to prejudge the event. And so on, But Alvai. But so far it hasn't happened, and we're hopeful, of course, that it will, and so on. But the concept is we cause the destruction, because the dinim about what's happening, the judgment, is now, not then. Every year it happens on Rosh Chodesh Av, basically. And if it's not built by Tisha B'Av, unfortunately, we, Klal Yisrael, have destroyed the Beis HaMikdash again. 1,947 times. I think that's the count. Which, of course, is terrible. So this is the first very important idea. What is our connection to the Beis HaMikdash destruction? It is now, not then. And therefore, we mourn. We mourn for what we did, not for what they did. They had a chance, for whatever reason, they destroyed it, but we, again, destroyed it now. So the mourning is a present-day mourning. Very important idea. This is not historical commemoration. This is now what we have done. It's a true avelus. That's what the Jews do. Okay, it's a very important idea. But is this basically what the Churban really is? Is this really what the destruction is really all about? And the answer is no, not really. It's much worse. We think that, wow, this is incredible. We have destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, so therefore, how bad can it get? Let me tell you something. It's worse. Why? In order to understand why it's worse, we have to understand certain hashkaf ideas, which Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto mentions in the Das Tfunos, Derech Hashem, or Maimar Hagul, and so on. What are these ideas? What did I say? I said that the Rebbeinu Shalom left Siluk Shechina. Obviously, that's the essential idea of the Churban Bayis, first Beis HaMikdash and second Beis HaMikdash. That the Rebbeinu Shalom left. The question we have to ask ourselves is, he left, fine, where'd he go? Where does the Rebbeinu Shalom go? What do you mean the Rebbeinu Shalom left? How does he leave? He's Moler Koretz Kavoidoi. He don't leave, he can't leave. He fills the earth, the universe, with his presence. So then where did he go? That is the question. Well, a reference to that is a concept, Kabbalistic concept, really hashkafa. It's called Shchinta B'Galusa, that the Shechin is in Golus. We need to understand what that means. What does it mean that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, is in exile? This is what we need to understand. Well, let's take a look. Let's go back to the beginning. Adam Rishon, because that's really what's called the model of the Bria. Whatever happened to him repeats itself in every generation. The Russian created Adam and Chava. What was their job, basically? It's called Hispashtis Kedusha. Their job was to complete the act of creation by bringing down enormous amount of Kedusha. You see, what the Russian did is very interesting. He created a universe, or rather, the way it starts is that Esespheres, the Kabbalah recognizes that there are 10 forces. That's basically what they are. We don't know what their nature is, but they are forces. And he created them, and there are 10 of them. And with these forces, he can create realities. That's how reality exists. The spheres create realities. What the spheres did, however, is created realities at different levels. The first reality they created was Olam Haba. Yes, that is the first. Olam Haba was the first thing created, not the last, it's the first. And in Kabbalah it's called Adam Kadmon, without getting into that, which is primordial man, whatever. Then what they did is slowly the spheres sort of degraded. Not really, but to us it looks like they degraded. And what that means is a diminishment of or light, or energy, or force, whatever you want to call it. And therefore they created second realities, in third and fourth and fifth. They created a reality called Atzilus, which is the beginning of Olam Hazeh. Then they created a reality called Bria, creation, that's the lower one. Then they created a reality called Yetzirah, formation. And then they created a reality called Asiya, which is basically our world, although it's far larger than our world. They created another level of reality. So we're looking here at 5 realities. And each time they create that, there's a diminishment of the or. There is a diminishment of the enormous output that they can give. Now, Olam Hazeh itself, of course, is a place where the absence of God is prominent. In other words, in all the realities above, one can experience an incredible divine presence. We don't even know what that means, even on a world above us, to experience the presence of God. But once you get to Olam Hazeh, which is this world, then the presence of God is enormously diminished. Enormously diminished. Therefore, the task is of man, Adam Rishon, who was a man, not Jew. Adam Rishon was not Jewish, however, he was the beginning of mankind. What his task was is to bring down the rest of the or. Because Olam Hazeh has what? Olam Hazeh has an enormous diminished light. So the job of Adam would be to bring down all the energy from the spheres. And what would happen is what's called a retrograde. It would reverse the process of diminishment of or. It would reverse the diminishment of the or that created an Olam Hazeh and reverse it. That's called zikuch. Zikuch means to purify. So therefore, what Adam was supposed to do is bring down that incredible force, more of it, had he done the mitzvah, which he didn't. But had he done it, he would have brought down this incredible amount of energy, force, or whatever. And that would have created what's called a zikuch, purification. He would have removed the materiality of the Bria. And therefore, the Bria would go up a level, then up and up, until the Bria, the creation, will ultimately result in Olam Haba. So what we're looking at is a retrograde, or regression, or a reversal of the process originally that was dictated by the spheres. This is called zikuch. And that's the task of Adam Rishon, which, by the way, is now the task of a Jew. What is that called? That's called the tikkun process. Tikkun means rectification or correction or restoration. So it is the job of Adam, and now it's our job, to restore the Bria, creation, to its full power, and that is Olam Haba. That was Adam's job, and that's called Hispashtis Kedusha, to bring down enormous amount of holiness. And that's really the Kedusha of the spheres, the energy of the spheres, the or, and that would reverse the entire process, restoring this world into another dimension, into Olam Haba eventually. That was his job. But what did Adam do? He didn't do that at all. Adam sinned. He did the sin where he ate from the Eitz Hadas, to Torah. And what that did is that changed radically the Bria. Now there are many ways it changed the Bria, which I'm not going to go into, but the fundamental way it changed was this. We know that the Rosh has to be what's called Mamsi. The Rosh creates everything, and he maintains the existence of everything. Well, how does he do that? What he does is through the spheres. He sends forth this incredible or, and they create. And what happens is that light or energy continuously flows, and therefore that maintains the existence of everything. Everything is connected to God, to Rabbi Shalom, let's assume a metaphor, by a cable. And it is through this cable that we are energized and we are created from nanosecond to nanosecond, and that's how he maintains creation. So the Rebbe creates and maintains existence at every given instant time. every nanosecond. That's what he does. Now, everything has that cable, or else it wouldn't exist. Adam had that cable, and guess what? The Nachash, the primordial snake, who was the mouthpiece of the Satan also has that energy, because that's how he survives. So what the Rasham said is, because you listened to the Nachash, Chava and Adam, you energized, or you gave it existence, an incredible power and existence. So until now, your job was what? Your job was Hispashtis Kedusha, which is to bring down the energy, the light, the force. But now it's not sufficient, because you gave what's called a mokum to the Satan, and therefore your job is not just to bring down energy, but your job is to destroy that being called the Satan. That's a new job. So it went from Hispashtis Kedusha to what's called Kfir Sarah. You need to destroy the Satan. How do you destroy a malach? I mean, it's incredible even to think about that. So what the Rosh did is the following. He did this. The cable that comes down and connects to Adam creates Adam and maintains his existence. So what he did is he cut the cable. Actually what he did is he cut the cable of the Satan, because even the Satan doesn't exist without the ore of the spheres. So what he did is he cut the cable of the Satan. Well, before the Satan was about to expire or vanish from existence, he took the cable end and he connected it to the cable of Adam. Amazing. So now the cable comes down from the Rebbe Hashem. It's called the Shefa, the Hashpor, the ore, and it forms a Y. One part goes into Adam, and the other part goes into the Satan. Amazing. Now, we could say to ourselves, so what? Okay, so we're married to the Satan in that sense. So what? But here's the problem. There's only enough shefa, enough ore, that comes down to sustain adequately only one side, not two. That's bad news. This is what happens. If that's the case, what determines which way the ore flows? If it flows to Adam, then he has incredible koiches. He grows in stature. However, if it flows to the Satan, then the Satan grows in stature, and then evil begins to dominate. Adam determines where it goes. If Adam does the mitzvahs, then the Shefa goes to Adam, and Adam becomes powerful. Actually, the Jews become powerful because we replaced Adam. All of a sudden, everything is phenomenal. Parnasa and health, everything is gewaldig. Ruchnius is incredible. Everybody has enormous drives to do Ruchnius. What happens if the Jew sins, because he took the place of Adam? Then the Satan is unique, and that's called Yunika. He's unique from the Kedusha of the Rabbanu Shalom. What does that mean? He feeds off that Shefa. What happens to him? He grows in might. That's called Tikbar Sarah, the growth or the proliferation of evil. And he grows incredibly strong, which has terrible repercussions for us and for the entire universe. What do we see is that there's what's called an inverse relationship. It's like a seesaw. When one side is high, the other side is low. When this side is high, the other side is low. In other words, since there's only enough for one side at any given time, it's reciprocal or inverse. They can never be equal at the same time. This is our relationship with the Satan. And therefore, it's combat. Because if you don't have that ore, you vanish from existence. So clearly, the interest of the Satan is to take all of that from Klal Yisrael, so he will exist, and the Jews, chas v'shalom, will be annihilated. That's all he wants, is to exist. Because now, it's existence that is the problem of the Satan. You see, it's no longer that he wants to be your Yetzer Hara. If he gets you to sin, then he's unique from your Kedusha that you would have gotten from that mitzvah. So therefore, now his objective is existence, not merely to serve as a Yetzer Hara. He has a new, what's called intention, or kavana. Without going into why the Rosh did that, because it has tremendous repercussions of why he did that, and it's to help Klal Yisrael. In any case, so it's combat. It's an inverse relationship, and it's interesting that no malach can grow. Every malach remains static at the level they were created. The only malach that can grow is a Satan. Why? Because we feed him. We make him grow. He's the only malach in existence, other than the Jew, who's also a malach, so to speak. who can actually change his position, his stature. Very interesting. In any case, we now are at Milchama with the Satan. When they call it Milchemas HaYetzer, it's not just do I sin or not. The real question is, do I exist or not? It's what's called an ontological problem. It's an existential problem, not merely a problem, well, do I sin or do a mitzvah? This is now what's called the status of the Bria. So our job really is to do what? Is to take back or not to give the Satan any of the energy by sinning. That's our job. Therefore, what the Baruch Shem said to Adam is, if you do the mitzvahs, you can kill the guy. You will eradicate, obliterate, annihilate the Satan, because you will have taken away his shefa. Very important idea. We can take it away, and therefore he dies, literally dies. So that's how an Adam, or that's how a Jew can destroy the Satan, the whole side of evil, by bringing in, taking away his shefa, and as a result of taking away his shefa, to bring it up, and then to bring down the rest of the Kedusha, and as a result of that, to change the entire focus of the Bria. It's a very important concept. But the question is, how do we do it? How do we do this? Well, if I do a mitzvah, what happens? Then I bring down Kedusha. In Kabbalah it's called sparks of holiness. I bring down Kedusha, sparks, energy, or whatever you want, Shefa, whatever you want to call it, fine. But what about if I sin? Then I give the Satan all my stuff, so to speak, right? And if Klal Yisrael sins, then he gives the Satan all their sins. So how do I take it back? So what the Baruch Shem did, an enormous act of chesed, he said, listen, you do the mitzvah, no problem. That's called Ispashtis Kedusha, you bring down the Kedusha. But how do I get back what I gave the Satan? And the answer is, there are two other devices. And all three is the way we do the tikkun, or the correction of the bria. How? Tshuva, repentance. The secret to repentance is that if I have charata that I do a sin, then automatically I withdraw whatever energy I gave the Satan as a result of the sin, the chet. So tshuva is an incredibly powerful device. In fact, it's called a tikkun device. And mitzvah is the first priority tikkun device. Okay, the second tikkun device is tshuva. And all of a sudden I can take back from what I gave him. But is that enough? No, not at all. Because the Baruch Shem knew Klal Yisrael is not going to do mitzvahs all the time. And then I can do tshuva, whatever. So we had to provide a third device. That third device is called Yisurin, or suffering. Yes, the secret of Yisurin, which has many manifestations, golus, poverty, sickness, you name it, right? All those Yisurim is really what's called a rehabilitative process, in the sense that it takes back from the Satan. Why Yisurim does that, I'm not going to go into, but that's its power. When a Jew suffers, he takes back the or, the shefa, that he gave the Satan, he takes it back to his side. In any case, if we have three tikkun devices, you have mitzvahs, tshuva, and yisurin. It's called Mosai, when. Mitzvahs, tshuva, and yisurin. That's the way to do it. Okay. Obviously, you don't want to do yisurin, you don't want to do it that way, right? Tshuva, fine. But the best way, of course, is the concept called mitzvahs. What do we see so far? That we are in a balance between us and the Satan. This is the critical factor of all history. Where do we see this? Well, we daven in the morning, Shachris, and Tachnun. And in Tachnun it says a very interesting pasuk. It says, Ad Mosai uscha bashvi v'sif'atcha b'yatzor. Interesting pasuk. How long, Ad Mosai uscha bashvi, how long will your power, your might, b'shvi, be in captivity, v'sif'atcha, and your beauty, b'yatzor, in the hands of the enemy? What does that mean? Because Klal Yisrael has two incredible gifts from the Rebbeinu Shalom. Because in many ways that represents divinity. It's called Oiz and Tferes. Oiz is might, which is Hatzlocha. Tferes is beauty, or Chochmah, Torah. In any case, so the pasuk says, how long will what? Will the Oiz of the Rebbeinu Shalom, which is the Oiz of Klal Yisrael, be in captivity? Why? Because he has it because of our Chatoim. And how long will that be also? The Tferes, the beauty, the Chochmah. how long will that also be by the Satan? We always say it. The question we have to ask ourselves is, what's it doing by him? What is our Oiz and Tfers doing? And we say that, right? Oiz Yisrael b'Gvura, we say the brachas in the morning. Oiz Yisrael b'Gvura, Gvura, right? And what do we say? Oiz Yisrael b'Sefara. There you are. The Oiz and Tfers. And so on. So the question is, what's it doing by him? And the answer is, that is the balance that I've just described. It is by him, because of the Chatoim of Klal Yisrael. And between all the mitzvahs, and all the tshuva, and all the isurim that Klal Yisrael has done, the Sultan has it in his rishus, and we take it back. And that's how we do the tikkun. In any case, this is a very important idea, the balance or the concept of the yadika of the Sultan, and this is really what we have to do. Okay, I'm going to give several examples to illustrate this, how the entire history of Klal Yisrael depends on this. Is there a feedback here?
Yeah.
Because it's so close to the mic, there's no way around that.
What is that? Is that that's the... Maybe you want to take that and move it in the other room? Would that be
Turn down the
used?
treble.
Or turn it down, that's all.
Aim it a little. Turn the treble down on the... It's fine.
Is it now okay? I think so. No, I still hear the...
They just have to.
Yeah, just turn it down.
Fix the room.
Move the speaker. Move it.
That's good. Just aim, just has to be aimed.
Aim the speaker a little way.
Halacha l'maisa.
That's good.
Yeah, I think it's better. Okay, good. Okay. We now have gone into what's called the fundamental introduction that you need to know before you can begin to look at history, including current events. Let's take a look. First Beis HaMikdash was destroyed 2,400 years ago. That's when it was destroyed. Long time ago. Who destroyed it? Babylon. What happened really? Well, the essential idea we know of any Churban is what? It destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore that's Siluch Shechina. That means that the Shechina left. That's what it means. Well, you remember the question what I asked? Where did he go? And the answer is, here's what happens. When the Shechina leaves, when we lose an Indian of something, of Kedusha, and if we don't deserve it, the Satan gets it. That's the Yanika. He's Yoinei. The problem is, if we lost the Beis HaMikdash, then the Satan is Yoinik from the Shechina itself. Because whatever we lose, he gets. If we're eating steak for dinner, he gets the steak. If we're eating tuna fish, he gets tuna fish. When we had the Beis HaMikdash, we were getting the Shechina. And he lost it. We lost it. So therefore, the Satan is Yoinek, nourishes from the Shechina itself. That's what Shechina b'Galusa really means. That's what it means. That the Shechina is in Golus. What that means is that the Satan is Yoinek. He holds the Shechina in captivity. Now, of course the Rebbe is not in captivity. It's absurd even to think that way. But what it means is Midah Keneged Midah. The Rebbe says, listen, you guys don't want me, so I'm going to go to the other side. The Rebbe voluntarily goes to the other side. That's what happens. But as far as we're concerned, the Shechina is in Golus. That's what happens. So therefore, this is what happened at the first Beis HaMikdash, the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. But wait a minute. We know the formula, don't we? When we lose the Shechina, he gets it, which means he can be yoinik from it. And the Rebbe voluntarily moves over to that side. But, remember what we have? We have Tiferes and Oiz, don't we? So, if we lost the Shechina, then we lose the Tiferes and the Oiz of the Shechina in many ways. Well, that's exactly what happened in history. It means that the Satan is able to take from the Tiferes and the Oiz of Klal Yisrael, Ad Mosai Uscha Bashvi, right? What happened? Do you know that within a 100-year period of time that we lost the first Beis HaMikdash, do you know that the major religions of the world were founded? Do you know that? Let's take a look. Buddhism, he lived then. Confucius, he lived then. Taoism, he was also then. Not only that, that was in the East. In the West, Greek philosophy, Aristotle, Plato, Archimedes, Parmenides, all these guys. This was the beginning of the modern era. The Chokhmah was given over to the Goyim. That's the Tiferes. What about the Ois? Well, the Ois, the might, was given over to Bovel, and the other Ois was Rome. Rome was founded right around the time we lost the Beis Hamikdash. Rome, Edom, the one that would destroy the Beis Hamikdash ultimately. That's when they began. They took over from what's called the Etruscans in 525 BCE, and that's when they began to grow. Therefore, that's the first V'ois, you see. So that's what happened. So really, world history can be explained by this formula. The balance between Klal Yisrael and the Satan. Where is it holding? You see. And this balance is critical in so many different ways. Let's take a look at the second Beis Hamikdash. Second Beis Hamikdash, same thing. Second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of Senas Chinam. But the real impetus to destroy the second Beis Hamikdash was Lashon Hara, the Chofetz Chaim says. And therefore, Siluch Shechina, right? What happened? The Shechina left. But wait a minute, we know what happens. When the Shechina leaves, what happens? Then the Tiferes and the Ois of Klal Yisrael goes to the other side. Yes? So can we see that? Yes. Well, the Ois is obvious because Rome became the most powerful nation in the world around that time. It began to have power a little before with Caesar and Augustus and so on. And then it really grew incredibly powerful right at the turn of the millennium. In any case, so there's the Ois of Klal Yisrael. Edom, Rome. Who is Rome? Well, we know Esav, right? Esav in the Torah, Zu Edom, the Torah says. Edom, Zu Roimi. Edom is Rome. That we know. And therefore, the might of Rome began at that time. Mamash. That's the switch, the unique of the Satan. Okay? But wait a minute. What about the Tiferes? Okay, that's the Ois. But what's Tiferes? Tiferes is Chokhmah. Religion is Chokhmah. Why? Because what a religion enables you to do is make a statement about the nature of reality. So, we saw that the major religions of the world were founded at the same time as the destruction of the first temple. But the second temple, what was the major religion? And we know what that is. Christianity. Christianity is a very interesting religion, I must say. Why? Let's take a look at Christianity. One, okay. Christianity is different than all other religions. Why? Because all other religions have nothing to do with Judaism. They have their own dogma, their own doctrines, and it's the end of it. Whether Judaism exists or not doesn't make a difference to other religions. But Christianity is really what's called in Yiddish a Moshe Kapoya. What does that mean? He's a dafka fakir, as they say. What does that mean? Here's what it means. Okay, we say we are Beis Yisrael. What do they believe? That the Rebbeinu Shem changed us because we've accepted their guy, and now they are Beis Yisrael. They believe that they took over the Jewish people. Wow, what a switch. Second idea, we believe that what? We have the Torah, right? What do they believe? They have the Torah, the New Testament. It's a fakert, you know. And then we believe we have the Mashiach, and we don't believe they have the Messiah, the Mashiach, you know, their guy. It's incredible. In other words, without Judaism, there is no Christianity, because Christianity is nothing more than no to Judaism. That's all it is. In fact, to show you how absurd it is, the Pope wears a yarmulke. I mean, talk about theft, right? It's unbelievable. They just don't know how to stop. In any case, but that's the switch. Because we destroyed the Beis Hamikdash through Lashon Hara and Senas Chinam. So Rebbeinu Shem said, the Tiferes and the Ois of you are going to go to who? They go to Goyim. Why? Because what does the Satan want with all that Kedusha? What does he want to do? Daven Shachris? Put on film? No. He's yearning from the Kedusha of the Shechina to destroy Klal Yisrael. Or rather, more important, to get them to be choitei, so it can be yearning more stuff. So in the second Beis Hamikdash, the Tiferes is what? Is Christianity, which Mamash was founded at that time. And the fact that Christianity evolved into a major religion is beyond Nisim. I mean, here's a guy who was crucified on a cross as a criminal. How in the world does this kind of guy generate a religion, right, of 2 billion people? It's beyond belief. We're looking here at Mamash Hashgacha Protes. That's what Christianity is. And it's basically from the sinas chinam and the lashon hara of the Jews. But it's even worse. Christianity is the greatest enemy of Klal Yisrael, Edom, because that's who he is. And who is today Christianity? It's Western civilization. So we have Asa becoming Edom, Edom becomes Rome. But what's interesting is the Russian didn't want Rome to be a nation representing Edom for thousands of years. So what he did is he changed Rome into a religion. So therefore the Jews would wander in a religion called Christianity, and that would be Edom, you see. So therefore Edom is really who? Christianity. And Christianity today is Western civilization. That's who they really are. And we have been subject for 2,000 years to Western civilization. I would love to tell you where you can actually see that. Let me tell you this idea. The question is, how much time do I really have? Rabbi Gold, how much time do I have? What?
Put me on the spot there, Rabbi.
Go for it, go for it.
Do I have time? I want to show you two interesting things, okay? Where is the seat of Christianity? It should be in Judea, right? Why is it in Italy? What's it doing there, right? Because Christianity is the heir of Rome. And that's why it's located in Italy, because Italy was Roman. That's exactly why it's there. It's not in Judea, because their guy walked in Judea, in Israel. So what's it doing in Italy? And the answer is because that's exactly, right, since Rome took over, or rather Christianity took over the tafkid of Rome, or rather Christianity took over the tafkid of Rome, therefore Christianity, the seat, must be in Rome. Now, where is it? It's in the Vatican. Well, if you take the word Vatican, how do you spell the Oasis Vatican? Vatican. And you jumble the letters, it spells out Tikkun. That's right. The Vatican is Tikkun. Because the essential Tikkun of Klal Yisrael for the last 2,000 years is Christianity. There's something else which I want to show you to what extent Christianity, what the damage has been done. Historians estimate 2,000 years ago that there were approximately 9 million Jews. However they estimate that. Historians also estimate how many Chinese were there 2,000 years ago. So they estimate there's 25 million Chinese. Interesting. Now, this is 2,000 years later, right? So through normal reproductive means, how many Chinese are there now? 1.3 billion. Yes? So we who have 8 or 9 million, right, should have, right, 1/3 of that, which means that there should be at least 300-400 million Jews. That's how much there should be by normal propagation, by normal reproduction. There should have been 300 million Jews today. Well, how many Jews are there? 13 million? That's it. Why? Because that is the destruction by Christians over the 2,000 years. And that's why after 2,000 years, all we have is 13 million people? It makes no sense. And not only that, we go back much further, 2,000 years before that, to Avraham Avinu. So we should have not 300 million, we should have almost 1 billion Jews. Can you imagine having 1 billion Jews? How many shuls there would be? In any case, that statistics gives us the understanding of the destruction by Christianity of the Jewish people. It's astounding, but that's what they've done. In any case, and one more idea which I want to tell you, which is interesting. It's unfortunate, it's tragic. Since the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the second one, because of sinas chinam and lashon hara, what is the weapon that Christianity uses to destroy the Jews? You know what that is? It's the New Testament. Because they have said so many vile things in the New Testament about the Jewish people. Well, what is that called in halacha? That's called motzei shemra. It's lashon hara. So it's mida keneged mida. The Rosh says, you want to destroy my house because of lashon hara? That is going to be the very instrument that you will be destroyed by, the lashon hara of Christianity, or rather the motzei shemra of Christianity through the New Testament. It's mashal mida keneged mida. It's astounding. But that is the instrument of Christianity, is the New Testament. That's why the Christians in many ways hate us, and so on, because of what they read in their book. Any case. So that's a second very important historical event. I'm going to give you one more historical event, which is critical because it's Nogea us. And once we have that, then we are now convinced that the whole concept of being yoine, the certainty yoine, is what causes history. There is nothing else. It is the Jews that determine history and all the events of what happens, like the Gemara says. In any case, there's a thing called the creation calendar. What is the creation calendar? The creation calendar means that the world was created in 6 days. Yes, and Shabbos was rest. Therefore, every day that it was created is equal to 1,000 years. Like it says in Tehillim, Elef Shanim B'Einecho is Kiyom Echad. 1,000 years from us is like 1 day to you. Therefore, the Gemara says, Shisa Alfei Shnin, for 6,000 years the world will exist, because that's equal to the 6 days of creation. In the 7,000th year, which is equal to Shabbos, the world will change. And that's the beginning of, without going into the whole thing, of Olam Haba, whatever. But the Yemei HaMashiach, the Messianic era, has to end by the year 6,000, which is the English year 2240. That means that the world will end, as we know, Olam Hazeh will end in the English year 2240, which I think is approximately 226 years from now. In any case, that's when the world ends. That has enormous repercussions for us economically. Why? Because if you have bonds that will mature after that date, get rid of them.
Bombs.
Bonds. Not bombs.
Sell them.
Well, that's the only financial advice I will offer you. Anyway, in any case, that creation clock is very critical. Through that clock, you can actually see what's happening in history. 6,000 years, 6 days. Now, the Zohar says the following, that in the year 5,000, which is the year 1240, 5,000, the aura of the Mashiach begins to come down, the Messianic light, yes, begins to descend in the year 1240, which is a long time ago. Why? Because we know that 1240, which is the year 5,000, right, is the beginning of the 6th day. Because you have 5,000 years, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And 5,000 is the beginning of the Elef HaShishi, which is the last day. And that's 1240, 5,000. And that's Erev Shabbos. So what the Zohar is telling us is that the Or Mashiach, as a preparation, begins to come down mamish on the beginning of the Elef HaShishi, which is the beginning, of course, the Shefa of the Mashiach begins to come down. On Erev Shabbos, that's why. And we know on Erev Shabbos is when you begin to prepare for Shabbos. So therefore, the Messianic light begins to come down. Exactly on that day. The question is, what is the Messianic light really? Well, there's a lot to talk about on that, but fundamentally, the Messianic light is like a magnifying glass. On whatever material topic you're looking at, you take a magnifying glass and you could see incredibly deep into the object. What the Messianic light is what's called Pnimi, the Or Pnimi. It enables you to see on any chomer, on any subject that you are looking at, it enables you to see the internal structure, the fundamental principles of that thing, which means the ultimate cause. Of course, what the Messianic light does is we will see the entire physical universe, we will see how all of it emanates from the Rebbeinu Shalom. And we will also see, of course, all the Kabbalistic dimensions, how everything emanates from the Rebbeinu Shalom. In fact, the Messianic light really is Kabbalah. Because Kabbalah is nothing more than a study, basically, okay, of this world and the Rebbeinu Shalom and what's in between. It is an understanding of all the what's called the meta dimensions, of all the Ilamas, and how everything is connected. And the Mashiach reveals that. So therefore, that is the Messianic light, which is in many ways very fascinating. Now, there's something that we have to understand, and then we will understand an incredible phenomenon of what's happening now. And one of that is that when the Jews go into Golus, there are 5 things that go into Golus. Not 1, 5. What are they? 1 is the Shekhinah itself, which we just talked about. Shekhinah begaluso, that the Shekhinah goes in Golus. That's the first thing. The second thing that goes in Golus is called Torah. Yes, because Torah also goes into Golus, as we will see why. The third thing that goes in Golus is Klal Yisrael. Jewish people, we go into Golos too. The fourth thing that goes into Golos is Eretz Yisrael, and the fifth thing that goes into Golos is Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew language, which can be looked at as a chelik of Torah. In any case, all five go into Golos, which is fascinating. Why? Because as the Gemara says, Kodesh Brichu Shchinte, right? Torah, Klal Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, Chadhu is one. In other words, what Chazal tell us really, without getting into it, is that there's a mystical identicality between all four or five. We're really one thing. It's really, each thing is a manifestation of the same thing. It's like water. When it's frozen, it's ice. When it is liquid, when its temperature rises, it becomes liquid, and then of course it becomes a gas. But it's really all H2O. It's really one molecule. The Jews, Shechina, Torah, and Eretz Yisrael are chad. Mystically, they are one entity. But just they have different, what's called different manifestations. In any case, so therefore, obviously, if one goes into Golos, they all go into Golos. They all go into exile. Well, fine. Let's take a look at the Torah. When did the Torah go in Golos? And the answer is by the Chet Egel. When Klal Yisrael sinned at the golden calf, what happened is, the luchas that Moshe Rabbeinu was bringing down was the Or Mashiach. It's brought down in many places. The Ramchal and Tzaddik, many places. That was the Or Mashiach. In any case, that's what he should have brought down. But he didn't bring that down. He broke it. Therefore, what happened? That symbolized that the Or Mashiach goes into the Klippa, which means that the Satan can be yoinek. That's what it always means. The Satan can nourish from the Or of the Torah itself. And therefore, that creates tremendous repercussions for us, which is very interesting. Torah is in the Klippa. That's really what's happening. Our Torah is really, in many ways, in the hands of the Satan. And that explains a great deal. If you take a look, where are the Shivrei Luchas Rishonos? Where are they? They are in where? They are in the Oren. So the exact manifestation of how they exist in the Oren is the exact manifestation how the Torah is in the Klippa, or the Satan is yearning from that. Because in the Oren, what do you have? They are completely fragmented. It's all pieces. The pieces are fragmented. Not only are they fragmented, they are disordered, out of sequence. And that is exactly an expression or a manifestation of the real Torah. The Torah is fragmented. Bavli, like the Gemara says, Ani b'makom echad, Ashir b'makom acher. Right? What does that mean? That's fragmentation. And it means it's out of order because really everything should be in one place. In any case, therefore the Torah itself is in what's called the Klippa, and we need to take the Torah out. But the Torah comes out when we come out. Everything comes out slowly together. As you begin to see what's happening now, that Jews are returning back to Eretz Yisrael, the Jews have Eretz Yisrael, and so on. Things are beginning to happen, which is amazing, and so on. But when did that start? That process started in 1240. Why? Because 1240 is the year 5000, which is the beginning of Erev Shabbos. And therefore, that's when it begins to come out. Well, how do we recognize that? Are there historical events that correspond to this? Remember the fundamental formula. It is us and the Satan. Who is accessing the Kedusha? Well, if the Messianic light is coming down, and we are sinning with Lashon Hara, which Jews basically, unfortunately do, then the Satan is being yoinek from the Or Mashiach. Well, what does that mean? What is the Or Mashiach when the Satan is yoinek? And I will tell you what it is, which is very interesting. The Or Mashiach in the hands of the Satan is called science. That's what science is. What does that mean? I will tell you. What is science? Science is nothing more than the study of internal structure of all things. If you're into biology, then you're studying molecular biology, you're studying the DNA. If you're into physics, you're into the atom. If you're into chemistry, into molecules, I don't care which topic, but science recognizes that every single chomer or topic has an internal structure, which is really the fundamental framework, you see. So science is a study of internality of all things that it attempts to study, you see. And science began in 1240, basically. What was the beginning of science? Well, there's a guy who lived then who was called Roger Bacon. He's the one who started the scientific method. It's amazing. And that began the breakaway from Aristotle. He was an armchair scientist, and the true scientific method. And that began to grow by leaps and bounds. And that's in the... Now, but science is not a klipa, remember, it's nothing more than a chokhmah. What it really is, it's a knife. In the hands of a surgeon, it will cure. In the hands of a murderer, it will kill. Science is chokhmah, that's all it is. And if you take the Om Mashiach and you look at chomer of the physical universe, right, you will see the internal structures, which is what science does. That's all it is. But when we say it's in the klipa, what does that mean? It means the Satan is using science to destroy the emunah of Klal Yisrael. He's not interested in science. What he wants is to show that there's an alternative explanation of what? Of the Bria. Science. You don't need God to explain what's happening. Science will do it. Why does he want to do that? Because he wants to destroy the emunah of Klal Yisrael. What's interesting is the world was never atheistic until the advent of science. And Darwin came along and just destroyed the whole thing because of evolution and science and so on. So that's what the Satan wants to do. He wants to take the Orishan in the Klipa, which is science, and he wants to use it as it is in the Klipa to destroy the emunah of Klal Yisrael. All it is a weapon for him. But science in itself is an incredible chokhmah. That's all it is. So we now begin to see what happened. And science, of course, began to grow. And you had Roger Bacon and so on, Francis Bacon and so on. What about Judaism? What happened to our Orishan? Didn't anything remain by us? And the answer is, of course. Who represents the Orishan? Well, first of all, the Zohar was discovered right around then. The Zohar was discovered approximately by Moshe de Leon, right? About 1290 or whatever. Kabbalah is the Orishan. That's the true Orishan. And we only have a smattering of that Orishan. But that's in Kabbalah. What about in Nigla? Not just Nista. And the answer is, of course, the Rambam. What is the Rambam? The Rambam was Meshane, altered the form of the Gemara, that it's not fragment anymore, it is into a beautiful work called the Mishnah Torah. That really is order and sequence, with no fragmentation. That is the Orishan, in terms of Nigla. And the Rambam lived in 1240. It's astounding that both movements happened at the same time. However, now both of them begin to grow, which is incredible. They both begin to grow. Until you get to 1740, which is Amar HaShacha on the creation clock. Amar HaShacha is dawn, which is Friday morning, 6 a.m., dawn. And the decision has to be made. And the Kessin Samagid says an incredible thing. He says, if the Jews are Zoicha, we will get the Or. If the Jews are not Zoicha, then it'll go to the other side, it'll go to the Satan. Which side did it go? It went to the Satan. Where do we see this? Which is amazing. Science, Isaac Newton, the founder of modern science, lived right around 1740. He lived from 1642, whatever it was. He died in 1727. He changed physics, the whole beginning of science, radically. There you are. That's the beginning of science as the Orishan in the Klipa. What did we get? Well, I'll tell you what we got. We got the Chmielnicki massacres. 1/3 or 1/2 of European Jewry, Polish Jewry, European Jewry was destroyed by Chmielnicki, which is astounding. And there's a famous Tosfos Yontif that says the reason why it was destroyed because people talk in shul, and obviously when people talk in shul, lashon hara. So what you actually see, so the lashon hara again, the sinas chinim of Jews destroyed our or and gave it to the goyim. And this has been going on since. And not only that, which I always found astounding, is that people at that time shunned the Kabbalah. They refused to learn Kabbalah because they said if Shabtai Tzvi can become this, Kabbalistically, Kabbalah, if he can take Kabbalah and become such a min, and so on, then we cannot learn it. So the Jews shunned their very Orishan. Mida keneged Mida. That's what you see. So the Jews themselves chased away their only or. So take a look at the balance again. And now what do we have, 1990? 1990 is 12 o'clock noon, Chatzois, of Friday. What's happening? Do you have any idea what's happening in the world of science? It's unbelievable. Every day, 7,500 articles are published daily. That's the amount of chokhmah that the goyim have. It changes so quick that nobody can even hold on to it. Every day, every year, there's new electronic devices. Scientists cannot believe the incredible hispashtus of chokhmah that is going on. Why? Because as we get closer to the end, right, then the Orishan comes down in greater intensity. But if it's going to their side, that's science. You see what's happening. In any case, that's a third illustration of the incredible balance that exists between the Satan and Klal Yisrael. That was a long introduction. But I think it really hits home. This is the idea to look at, the Nekuda. Okay. Let's go to this. There are 8 persecutory agents. There are 8 agents that if Klal Yisrael has to suffer, there are 8 nations that are designated that they will be the ones to do it. The first one was Egypt. The second one was Babylon, Bavel. The third is Persia, Greece, and Rome. And we know who Rome is today, Christianity and so on. These are so we have 5 now. We have altogether 5. But there are 3 more. One is the nation that will persecute Klal Yisrael, and they have the ability to do that. One of them is Yishmael, Muslims, Islam. The second one is called the Erev Rav, which is the Jews themselves. They are also an enemy of the Jews, as we will see. And the third one is called Amalek. These are the 8 nations that are designated to persecute the Jews if the Jews in fact destroy it. In the end of time, which we are now in the Ikvus of the Mashiach, the 3 prominent nations are Edom, obviously, Christianity, and so on, America, Western civilization. You have Yishmael, which is Muslims, and you have the Erev Rav. And the Erev Rav, of course, unfortunately, is Jews themselves. Let's take a look. We know, we have some idea about Edom, about the concept of, we know that Esau is Edom, Edom is Rome, Rome is Christianity, and Christianity is Western civilization. And I had mentioned what they have done to destroy Klal Yisrael over the 2,000 years. And of course, when you take a look at what America is doing now, it is beyond comprehension, which I will speak about. Second idea, we talk about Yishmael, the Arabs, or Muslims. The Arabs are only 10% of Islam. 90% are not Arabs. Iran, Turkey, Indonesia has the greatest Muslim population. But fundamentally, the Arabs are certainly the founder of course, of Islam and so on. So they are the ones. And of course, you have the Erev Rav. These are the last nations in the end. What is happening now? And now when we are now going into the last 20 years, once you understand that, you can actually see what's happening. 2,000 years, 4,000 years have passed since Avram Avinu. And he's the one who took over the mission of Jews. He's the one who took over the mission of Jews, of course, to do the tikkun. And after 4,000 years, the Jews have brought a tikkun to the creation. They have misaken the bria. That's what they've done. 4,000 years, they have done the tikkun. What does that mean? It means fundamentally is that they have taken out of the Satan 98% of his koyach. 98%. And that's how much they've taken out, besides bringing down more Kedusha. Well, what does that tell us? That means the Satan is dying. Yes. And there is no medical doctor that can save him. Because the only way he can survive is Kedusha or sparks of holiness. He's dying. Well, dying people are desperate. They are desperate to maintain their existence. So this is the fundamental concept of what is happening now. If you got that, and now you understand what does it mean, Yenika, the transference of Kedusha to the hands of the Satan, he's dying. Stopped. Gende. Finished. He's desperate. He's desperate to survive. What does he do? Well, imagine, and I will give you the metaphor, the mashal, and you'll understand exactly what's happening with the Satan. Imagine that there's a general. What is the general? The general is fighting another army, another nation. So you have nation A fighting nation B. The problem is nation A only has 1 week's left of firepower. They only have 1 week's left of armaments, and that's it. Bad news for that nation. So there's only 3 strategies that they can do, that this general can do. What is that? 1, it's called the big bluff. What he can do is use 6 days of his 1 week's left firepower and throw it at the other nation, and the other nation will still do, we can't believe this guy still has this stuff. So they'll be frightened, okay? and they'll stop fighting. They'll sue for peace. It's called the big bluff. And he does that. He throws an incredible amount of firepower at the other nation, and he tries to bluff them to frighten them. Doesn't work. Well, strategy number 2. He takes some of his people and he sends them silently and hiddenly into the other nation to try to break the resolve of the nation B. Because, you know, we don't want war, we want love and all this kind of stuff, which is what America did in the Vietnam War. All of a sudden there was all movements to stop the war. All right? So he sends them into the other nation to hopefully to break their resolve not to make war. Does that? Fails. Looks pretty bad. He's got 1 day's worth of firepower, sent the guys in, they failed. So what's he going to do? He's got only one more strategy. He has to contact an ally and say, hey, we're out of everything. We need you to give us new weapons. You know, you got to help us or we're finished. Ally. Fine, okay. That's exactly what the Sultan is doing. But let's take a look at what his historical strategy is. He's dying. So strategy number 1. What's strategy number 1? It's called the big bluff. Where he gets everybody, right? All the firepower. Which historical event corresponds to the big bluff? I will tell you, it is the Holocaust. Now, there are many reasons for the Holocaust, but let me tell you one of the very important ones. Well, the Sultan is unusual. He didn't get just Yamach Shemoy Hitler, Yamach Shemoy in Germany. No. He got the whole world to go against the Jews, each one in their own way. Each one is culpable or guilty of destroying the Jews. Whether it be America, who didn't accept the Jews, England, who shut Israel and did not allow any of them in, which is beyond belief. It's Reitzchen. Those are the English, okay? And then he had all the other countries where they joined the Nazis and so on. So all the nations of the world are guilty of killing the Jews, basically. Each one at a different level. Why did he do that? The Sultan doesn't get anything from the death of a Jew. It means nothing. He needs to get a Jew to sin. That is yoine. So here's what he was hoping. That he would destroy millions of Jews, and therefore they would abandon their religion. Because they would say, how could God do this to us? So obviously, like in the time of Daniel, there is no more covenant. That's the end. So therefore, what would happen? They would all sin, and then you would be yoine. So the Holocaust resembles, or is the first strategy, the big bluff. All the armaments means all the nations of the world, to try to destroy the emun of Klal Yisrael, so therefore they will sin, and he can now be yonik nu kedusha. Failed. So now we go into the second strategy. The second strategy is what, remember, if you remember what I said, is to send your guys into the other nation to break the resolve. Now remember, when most of the stuff has been removed from the Sultan, well, where is all this stuff? It's in the hands of Klal Yisrael. Because we've taken it out of the hands of the Sultan and we brought it back to Klal Yisrael. It's on our side. It's called Sitra de Kedusha, side of holiness, as opposed to Sitra Achra, the other side. Right? So what does the Sultan have to do? He's got to go to Klal Yisrael, to destroy Klal Yisrael. He can't go to the Goyim, right? Because they have no energy, because he's the one who provides all the energy. When he's Yoine, he is able to give all the energy to the Goyim. Well, if he's bereft of the energy, can't go to them, he can't give them anything. So he's got to go to the Jews. What Jews? And the answer is the Erev Rav. That's why the Erev Rav is so dangerous. What the Sultan did in the second strategy is went to the Erev Rav, which are Jews. But the Kedusha is in the hands of the Jews. Therefore, he goes to the Erev Rav at that time, and that's why the state of Israel was founded right after the Holocaust. And who's the one who founded the state of Israel? Mapai, Labour, and so on. These guys, I hate to say it, it's terrible, are the Erev Rav. Now, when I talk about Erev Rav, I don't mean people, I mean leaders. So I don't want to think in any way that Chas v'Shalom, a Jew, is an Erev Rav. A leader is an Erev Rav. It's the one who espouses the doctrine that Torah is not the Ikka. The Ikka is what? Is Jewish culture, as we will see. What is an Erev Rav really? Where does it come from? It all starts off from Yaakov and Esav. Esav is about to meet Yaakov, and Yaakov is frightened, for whatever reason. And also Yaakov is mispal. What does it say? Hatzileni no miyad ochi miyad Esav. Save me from Esav, my brother, and from Esav. Now we know Esav is the brother of Yaakov, so why does he have to write Ochi? So what Ochi means is my brother, means save me when Esav comes as my brother. He's a from a guy, he's the guy, he's the Jew saying, hey, let's do it, and so on. He's my brother, right? Or save me when he comes as Esav, obviously an enemy. What is the problem with this? The problem is Ochi, looks like a good Jew, right? He wants to help us. This is the problem. The power of the Erev Yav is, in many ways, it's a tumor. Why does cancer kill a person? Cancer is really, it should be a foreign element where the immune system destroys the tumor. And the answer to that is that no, because the tumor is really self. It is the body itself, except it's the cells that have gone awry for whatever reason, telomeres and so on, right? So therefore, the immune system doesn't recognize the cancer, as an enemy. So because if it did, it would wipe out the tumor. The immune system that the Rebbe created is beyond belief. The problem is that the tumor is Ochi. He's my brother. So why should I kill him? Therefore, it's like a tumor, and therefore the Erev Rav, I hate to call them, but the leaders it's a tumor. It's a cancer because they want to destroy Klal Yisrael. And Klal Yisrael doesn't recognize that they want to destroy Ilam Haba. The problem is they have incredible credibility. That's their weapon. They have enormous credibility because they're Ochi. But really, what do they say? What is the message of an Erev Rav? The Erev Rav says, of course there's a Torah. But the Torah is like Shakespeare, it's great literature. Right? That's really what it is. Right? And of course, the main thing isn't Torah, it's culture. It's gefilte fish. Right? Because gefilte fish is culture. Right? All the things that Jews do, right? Matzahs and matzah brei, happen to like matzah brei, right? And knedlach, which is gewaldig, and so on, right? This is what Judaism is really all about. We have phenomenal literature. Of course, Sandy Koufax, he's Jewish, so we have to be proud of Sandy Koufax, which I'm sure many people are. But in any case, it was a picture, by the way, that was an incredible picture. But this is what we pride ourselves on. In other words, what the Erev Rav does is they say, of course there's a thing called Judaism, but it has to do with the Torah. The uniqueness of Judaism isn't Torah, it has to do with the agreement between us and God. It's another ethnicity, it's another group, it's culture, and so on and so forth. They want to supplant the Torah and the agreement with the Rabbanu Shalom, the Bris. They want to supplant it and be like every other nation. And since they come as Ochi, that's their credibility. That's why nobody is aware of that, how destructive they are. And therefore, they are the greatest enemies of Klal Yisrael. Because other enemies we can recognize. Who recognizes an Ochi, a brother? This is the problem. And therefore the Sultan, in his wiles, knows exactly, and he recruits the Erev Rav. And they're the ones who founded the state of Israel. You see? All these guys. What's the result? Take a look at what they did. They destroyed the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. You walk in Tel Aviv, you wouldn't recognize that's part of Israel. And so on. And I'm not even talking about the kidnapping the Yemenite babies and all everything else, the kibbutzim, and what they force guys to go to fry kibbutzim. The amount of damage that they have done to the religion of the Jews is almost incomprehensible. That's the Erev Rav. Those are the dissidents. That's strategy number 2 that the Sultan uses to destroy Klal Yisrael. They are the nation, they are the soldiers of who? Of the Sultan. And they come as the Erev Rav to destroy Klal Yisrael. This is the problem. And we are still subject to their koyach, their dominion, and so on. In any case. But did it work? No. There's a tremendous tshuva movement. Most Jews in Israel are Masorati. At some level, whatever that is, and that's incredible, and so on. So the Jewish people as a whole have refused the message of the leftists, liberals, Mapai, Mapam, and all these guys, and so on and so forth. Remember, I do not refer to Jews, I refer to leaders. Big difference. The worst is a Jew is a Tinik Shenishba that doesn't recognize who the enemy is. In any case. Now, so therefore, that didn't work. Because there's a tremendous resurgence back to Kedusha. So what does the Sultan do? He's dying. So he's got to do strategy number 3. What is strategy number 3? An ally. What ally? The Sultan is the only one who can be unique from the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. There is nobody else. But there's a tremendous Maharal that says the following. There is somebody else. Who? Yishmael, the Arabs. And that's bad news for us. How? Because the Maharal says by Avram Avinu, when he said, Li Yishmael yichyi lefanecho, alavai Yishmael should live before you. When the Moshe said, Ki b'yitzchak b'kor lechozora, and so on, as Avram Avinu said, Alavai Yishmael should live before you. What does that mean? That Yishmael should live before you, unique from your Kedusha directly, not from the hands of the Sultan. You see, and the Moshe said, I have heard you. What that did is it gave a koich of Yishmael to draw down energy, Kedusha, or whatever that is, Shefa, directly from the Rebbeinu Shalom, and not through the hands of the Sultan. And therefore, they are an implacable enemy. This answers many questions, by the way. What are the questions? That's why the name of God is Yishmael, Yishmael. Why? That's one of the reasons. The Gemara has other reasons, and so on. Because Yishmael, the Rebbeinu listens to them and gives them the Kedusha directly. A second idea is there's a tremendous difference between Christianity and Islam. Christianity does what? Christianity wants to destroy Judaism, okay? And they want to say we are competitors. We compete. Yishmael says we don't compete with Jews, okay? Really, we are Yishmael. We are sons of Avram. We really are the real Jews. They even say the Akedah wasn't Yitzchak and Avram. It was Yishmael and whoever, Yishmael and Avram, right? I always get a kick, and that's the place where they say that Yishmael was on, and that was tremendous Mesiras Nefesh, and so on. Without getting into that, I always get a kick in the fact that the Akedah of Yair Lamed is Al-Qaeda. Anyway, interesting. Al-Tikre Akedah Ella Al-Qaeda. And that's really what they do. They allow themselves to be killed. In any case, that's our problem also. So therefore, that's what the Sultan does. He goes to Yishmael. He says, listen, I'm out of it. You guys got your own stockpile, right? I need your stuff. So what does the Malach of Yishmael do? He says, I got you. No problem. I'm going to give you my energy. But there's a deal. What's the deal? The deal is this. Until now, who is your Bechor? In the old days, it was Egypt. They were the Bechor. The Rasham killed Egypt, and he made Kais for the Bechor. But who's the Bechor of the Sultan? In every generation, there's another firstborn of the Sultan that has the main shlichus, agency of the Sultan. Most of the 2,000 years, it's been who? It's been Edom, Christianity. They're the shlich of the Sultan, they're the Bechor. So the Malach of Yishmael says the following, you know what I want? I want my guys to be the Bechor. Forget about Edom and Christianity. I want Islam to be the guys. That's the deal. You want my energy? You take them. They will be the Bechor. They will be the major agent to dominate the world. What does the Sultan say? Okay. And therefore, take a look at what's happening. Yishmael, wherever you look, there's some guy in a bedsheet. Wherever you look, these guys, they did not exist in the 80s. You don't see these guys. All of a sudden, since 1989, the Intifada, they have come out of nowhere. And by the way, 1989 was Chatzos, by the way. They have come out of nowhere. And they're all over, And Europe is being destroyed by the Muslims. They have no idea what's about to happen to them. You can't even go to Europe anymore. It's no longer Europe. It's basically Eurasia or it's just Eurabia. That's right. Yeah, France. 1 out of every 3 children born in France is a Muslim. Right? And they already have about 12, 15 million Muslims. That's the end of the Jewish residency there. It's over for them. And I hope they see their handwriting on the wall. England, enormous. All over Spain, Belgium, and so on. The Muslims are taking over the whole Europe. Right? So you can say, okay, Europe is one thing. You have no idea what the Sultan is. He has an intellect that's off the charts. So what he said to the Malach Yishmael, okay. So the Malach Yishmael said, yeah, I want my guys in. But the Malach Yishmael says, but what's the major problem? America's Edom. America's Christianity. So what happens? So there's no problem here. Who would imagine that the king of Edom, America, is a Muslim? Obama. How in the world did Obama ever get to be president? It's a mess. He could never do it by himself. It's impossible. Here's a man whose total job experience is a community organizer. He couldn't even get a job in a company and a CEO. He has no experience. How in the world can American people put him in? It's beyond belief. And not only that, he hangs around with leftists. He went to a church that was anti-Semitic. I mean, there were so many things against him. It was beyond belief. Why? Because the Rebbe said, that's the deal. I need Yishmael to be over America. And Obama, what's his job? His job is to destroy America. And that's exactly what he did. Because that's what Yishmael does. Yishmael's job is to destroy Edom because they want to be the Bechor. That's what a Bechor does, isn't it? When you want to take over, that's what you do. You destroy what? Competitors. Remember in the old days? When a king became emperor, he had to kill all his brothers and sisters because he didn't want any competitors. That's what they did in Rome all the time in Greece. They always killed their immediate family so nobody would be a competitor, and so on. He's destroying America because that's his job. But it's an unbelievable mess that a guy like Obama is in charge of America, and he's destroying America, and so on. In fact, they just took a poll when I left America. They took a poll that 54% of America holds that he's the worst president since World War II. Finally they're waking up. And here's a guy that they thought was the Messiah. Oh. Anyway, there's a lot to comment on that, but Daya Chakima Baramiza, as they say. In any case, so basically, this is what's happening. So therefore, Yishmael is on the way up. But here's the interesting part. Yishmael can only last a certain amount of time. Because their koyach to take V'yonek from the Shechina or whatever is only as long as they have schus. And they have schus. They have Milah, okay? They believe in one God, okay? They pray 5 times a day, and so on. They give tzedakah, okay? And they do fast, Ramadan. Of course, this is all copies of Judaism. It's all from Yiddishkeit. I mean, everything they took is nothing more than a mitzvah and so on. But they have merits, and then the Zohar says that's the schus to be the caretakers of Eretz Yisrael. In other words, what Moshe did is he threw Christianity in the Crusades off. The Crusades only had Israel for 100 years, and he threw them out because they have idols. But he allowed Yishmael to be the babysitters, the caretaker, that as long as Klal Yisrael is not Zoicha, therefore the ones who will dominate Israel, be in charge of Israel, are the Arabs, because they don't have any images. They believe in one God, and they have no images. In any case, therefore, they are the ones now. But their schus will run out. And the interesting thing about that is we are very close, as we'll see, to the end. So what is happening now is Yishmael is falling. They are falling because they are running out of
Soil.
Kedusha. They're falling. Where do you see that? It's incredible. Where are they falling? Take a look at all the Arab nations. Libya, after they killed Gaddafi. Libya.
A little louder, please.
Louder.
Yeah.
Libya. After they killed Gaddafi, it's a nightmare in Libya. It's unbelievable. The whole place is falling apart. Egypt. Egypt is very interesting. Why? Because the essence of Yishmael is not Egypt. It's the Muslim Brotherhood. It's called the spearhead of Yishmael. Sharia law, Muhammad, these are the essence of Islam. And the Arabs, Egypt is destroying the Muslim Brotherhood. They kicked out Morsi. It's Hashgacha protest. They kicked them out. And it's interesting, well, if the Russian wants to kick them out, why did Morsi get in? Because he also got into a mess. Who would ever think that the Muslim Brotherhood would get into Egypt? And the answer is because the Russian wanted them in Egypt to be the head. Why? Because a person could always say, well, if the Muslim Brotherhood would have led Egypt, they would have been better. So Moshe said, I want you to get rid of that pipe dream. I'm going to make them the head, and then I'm going to throw them out. And and of course they failed. They had no concept of how to run a country. And besides, how does a man do that, Morsi? What he should have done is consolidate his power and then take over Egypt. Instead, in the first year, he's already trying to act like a dictator. In any case, but that's a tremendous mapola from Yishmael that the Muslim Brotherhood is being killed as we speak. They're being killed every day. That's Yerida of Yishmael. So that's Egypt. 3, Lebanon. Lebanon is not even a country basically. It's really taken over by Syria and other forces, and Al-Qaeda and so on, and Hezbollah. 4, Syria. Syria it's unbelievable. They're killing each other. It's an incredible chesed of the Bershom where he says, don't worry, you don't have to kill them. I will get them to kill themselves. And of course, since Shiites are fighting the Sunnis, right? I remember when Iraq was fighting Iran. Remember in 1980? You know what we was? Oh yeah, I was being misspelled that they should both be victorious. Right? They should both have nitzachon, victory. The same thing in Syria, they're destroying each other. And Syria can never come back again because the Shiites hate the Sunnis and vice versa. He has destroyed that country so utterly, it's the end of Syria. What an einish for Syria. And besides Syria, right, there's also Afghanistan is wiped out, and Taliban is come in, of course. Then you have Iraq, which is what we'll talk about. Iraq is very dangerous, what's happening in Iraq. But Iraq is finished. And so on. Wherever you look, and Jordan's next, and he knows that because his country is, I think, 70 or 80% Palestinian. I mean, it's Arabs. It's not even. He's the Jordanian. What's his name? It's Hashemite, which is really Saudi Arabian. That's who they really are. They're not even Jordan. England did that, and he made them a separate country. But the Arabs want Jordan. Of course, they want Jordan, and so on. So he's next on the line. Every Arab country is falling, but that means. No, Iran is not yet fallen. Although Iran is dented. Yes, they are dented. But also the Iran to really flex their muscle. And that's why, hold on for Iran. But and that's because the world is now wakened up to Iran. But believe me, they're maintaining themselves. But in any case, but what we see is Yishmael is falling, which is Givaldi, and so on. So this is the Mapol of Yishmael. In any case, and okay, you have to Iraq. I want to talk about Iraq, but okay. So what comes out of all of this is the Sultan is dying. That's what's coming out, and he's marshaling all the forces, the Erev Rav of Edom and so on. What is interesting that in the olden days, Christianity itself could destroy the Jews. You see. And not only that, Islam could destroy the Jews. But today it's not so. America, the Erev Rav, and Yishmael, all three are now necessary. Why? Because they have lost an enormous amount of koyach. That's another simon that the Sultan is dying. Because he doesn't have enough to feed only one nation to destroy the Jews. You see? And that's why all three have to band together to destroy the Jews. There are many indicators for that. But in any case, so far, this is what's happening. In any case, now, what's the problem here? The problem is the Fruma, the Charedim. Why are the Charedim the problem? Because the Tikkun of the Bria comes through the Charedim. Why? Because most of Klal Yisrael is a Tinuk Shenishba. They're gone. Most of Klal Yisrael doesn't even know what to do anymore. In America, they're all lost. In Europe and so on, and even Eretz Yisrael, most of them have no idea really. Somebody told me a quote from Shimon Peres, He said it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy that Jews don't even know how to say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Yoyim Boed. I don't know if that's true, but if it's true, wow, what a blunder. What a blooper, as they say. Maybe he should talk about himself first, then worry about the other Jews. In any case, why is that? Because the Fruma are the only one who comes sucking the Bria, because they have full Bechira. Everybody else has minimal Bechira or no Bechira or whatever, each one at his own level. So therefore, the Sultan's real enemy isn't Jews, it's the Charedim. It's Fruma. What do you wear? Keep more things. Okay? 1. There's a very interesting Zoya. It's in a Raya Mehemna in the Zoya. The Zoya says this. Tchias HaMesim, most people think Mashiach ben David will come, and then you have Tchias HaMesim. But when does Tchias HaMesim begin? It begins obviously when Mashiach ben David arrives. And that's part of the Zikuch, by the way, the purification of material substances, and so on. In any case, The Zohar says something interesting, that really Tchias HaMesim begins 210 years before the end. Not everybody gets up at one time. It all depends how many sins you did. So the people who did less sins, they get up right away. The more chatoim you did, the more zikach you need. You need it's like you send your clothing to the cleaners. It takes more time, a couple of days, as opposed to 1 hour. In any case, so the Zohar says that Tchias HaMesim, which means the beginning of Mashiach ben David, is 210 years before the end. So if the end is 6,000, 210 years before that is Tovshin Tzadik. 16 years from now. That's right. That means Mashiach ben David, according to that Zohar, will come in 16 years. Astounding, isn't it? Now, here's what has to happen in 16 years. And then you begin to understand the incredible acceleration. I'm not even going to all the events that happened until now and so on. One, the rise of Yishmael to war with Edom. Then you have to have the clash of civilizations. Then you have to have the entry of Mashiach ben Yosef, who will bring all the people back to Kibbutz Goliath. He will build a third base HaMikdash. He will bring the Or Rishon back, and so on. Okay? And then you have the war of Gog and Magog. Yeah, there's one more coming up. And that's Amalek. Okay? But that's a messianic war. So you have Gog and Magog, and then Mashiach ben David comes and he wipes out Amalek, and it's beyond belief what he does, and so on. And then the whole world operates not just through normal Teva, it operates through miracles and so on. The whole Teva changes and so on. In any case, all this is going to happen in 16 years. And it is. You take a look at what's happening. The incredible acceleration is beyond belief. Why? Because we're looking at 16 years, if that Zohar is correct. Right? And everybody knows there's something going on here. History never moved this far. It used to take 200 years before something happened in history, right? And then it drew out another 100 years. Today, every other year, every other day is another scandal. Just ask Obama. He can tell you all about it. And so on. Obviously, it's an incredible acceleration, and so on. So that's one idea, is we are looking literally at the end. So therefore, what's the message for us? Tshuva. We need to be careful for sinas chinam. You cannot be Sunni a Jew. I don't care who he is or where he is. Either he's a tinik shenishba, and you cannot hate this man. One, or I don't care if he wears a yarmulke or doesn't. He's a Jew. And if he wears a yarmulke and does a mitzvah, I don't care how tzeruka it is. He's in the eyes of the Moshem, he's a yikam atzias, because 90% of the Jews are gone anyway. So anybody does a mitzvah, incredibly off to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So Klal Yisrael, especially the Charedim, the Fruma, the Shem Torah mitzvahs, have to stop the sinner. They have to stop the lashon hara, which is the real enemy or the real weapon of the Satan, lashon hara. And they have to stop the gaiva, the elitism. That's what they have to stop. That's the take-home message. Okay? That's very important. The second idea is tshuva. You have to do, we all have to do tshuva. Each one of us has chatoim, we do, whatever. We need to think about this. Because when Mashiach comes, there's no more bechira. I don't know if you know that. There's no more free will, because the truth is obvious. It's obvious. So Malachim have no free will. It's so obvious that the Bansham is there. There's no bechira, and so on. Same thing. So we all have to think about tshuva itself. But those are the four ideas of the take-home message. No gaiva, no sinas chinam, no lashon hara, and tshuva. Very important. And I will end with this. Why is the end of time called Chevle Leda? Birth pangs of the Mashiach. Because in many ways, it's like a woman giving birth. Okay? All of a sudden, the body, in incredible wisdom, will take the child and turn it upside down, where the head now faces out or down. Right? And all of a sudden, this kid was incredible. For 9 months, it was like the Hilton. Right? The Hilton, right? It had all the food it wants. It was enclosed in a warm environment. It was gewaldig. It's Gan Eden. And all of a sudden, the infant gets turned around and it gets pushed. So the infant says to itself, it's over with. I had a great time for 9 months, and now I'm finished. And its head is being squeezed. The body is being squeezed. Right? That's the ikvus of the Mashiach. That's the end. In the end, and then what happens to the infant? Comes right out, And it's a different world that it could never have imagined inside. Never. The world in the universe is a whole different dimension. Outside, it looks around, light. I mean, it can't believe what it sees. That's the exact mashal. In the end of time, the 9 months, Chever Leda, these are the birth pangs. When we are being forced into tremendous Yisurim, where all of this has to happen to clean up Klal Yisrael, to clean up the world, to Mavareh, who's on the side of the Jews and who's not, and so on. That's what has to happen. And then right after that, what's going to happen? There's going to be a messianic era which we cannot even begin to imagine. And I will tell you what Chazal say. It's a Medrash Rabbah. But the Medrash Rabbah says that the entire Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, all of it, Bavli, Yerushalmi, Shulchan Aruch, Sheilas and Shuvas, the hundreds of thousands of Sfarim ever written, is Hevel, Luft, compared to the Or Mashiach. You know what Luft is? Nothing. There's not even a Mamoshas here. That what we knew as the whole Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu is Luft compared to the Torah of the Mashiach. This is a Medrash Rabbah at the end of Koheles. It's astounding. Okay? And then it says that the Torah of the Mashiach, and that's what it means, Kimo, it's Deo, that the world will be filled with the knowledge of God. Right? And I want to tell you something. The knowledge of God isn't stories and segulas. It's Chochmah. Chochmah Atzumah, where the world will all of a sudden pay attention to unbelievable concepts and ideas of which we cannot even fathom. That's how incomprehensible it is. Luft compared to that of the Or Mashiach. And the Or Mashiach is Luft Hevel compared to the Or of Olam Haba. I ask you, do you have any idea what's up ahead? Nothing. But like I say, these are the travails, the difficulties that we have to go through in order to be Mezakah Klal Yisrael, to be Menakeh the Bria, to change it, to be Mezakeh the Bria. But in the end, what's going to happen? All those anti-Semites, everybody, you think they're going to do tshuva? They won't even know what to do with themselves. They will be the most frightened people on earth, because each one will know what they did to every Jew. And they will realize, uh-oh, I made a big mistake. Right? That these are the people. And we made them suffer? This is insane. And not only that, not only are the main people, they are, like the Bereshit says, I dwell in the midst of Israel. If they want to access God, they got to go to a Jew. Because the Kiddush of Klal Yisrael only comes through him, through his neshama. That's how we access the Bereshit, through our neshama. So a guy will say, hey, if I want the dope, the heroin, I got to go to a Jew to get a high. Right? I'm using a martial, obviously, right? And so on. So you can have millions of Jews, billions of goyim surrounding the Jews to get something, some type of drug, something. So it's not only the oynish, what they have done to Klal Yisrael, but it's what Klal Yisrael now has to offer the Bria. Think about that. It is absolutely beyond belief what is going to happen. So, remember the take-home message. No gaiva, no sinas china, no lashon hara, and do tshuva. If that happens, all these guys, remember one thing, Einod Mavadoi, there is no koyach acher. The Arabs have no power, nobody has power. It's the Russian that has power, that's the end of it. Except he gives koyach to the Arabs to fight the Jews. Really, there's zero. In fact, we're all zero. That's really what we are. That's what Einod Mavadoi means. So let's hope that this year, this Tisha B'Av, right? That the Mashiach ben Yosef will come, Mashiach ben David, the Messianic era will end, and that'll be basically the end of Yishmael and all the enemies of Klal Yisrael. And we will zurch to a parsha of which we can have no hasaga. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Rabbi. You said that we have.
By the way, there's a